Hello, welcome back to Small Things Brought Together. My name is Robin Love. Small Things Brought Together is an ongoing series exploring the creative process through long format conversations with artists about their work and especially about their process. I am thrilled that we are now in our fourth season. And as we kicked off the season with Aaron Hunt and Fogo Island, we continue with another artist on Fogo Island, which is an island off of the north coast of Newfoundland in Canada, and becoming a really rich place for artists to land. So in today's episode, we're talking with a painter, M'Liz Keefe. We recorded this back in August 2022. And so I'm delighted to bring it to you today, this very moving, beautiful conversation with M'Liz about her work, which is primarily painting and drawing. So I hope you enjoy it. So,
okay.
Thank you, M'Liz, for being part of Small Things Brought Together.
Okay.
I'm excited to be here in person with you at your studio on Fogo Island, which is quite a thing.
Yes.
Quite a thing to get here. And a very, it's because it was so spontaneous.
Yes, we were just laughing.
We were just laughing.
Camera came on, so let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
We hope we get serious in a few seconds.
We will.
Okay, good. If not, we could do do-over sometime.
Totally.
Okay, okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was unexpected that I got to be here, but I'm so happy because we have been talking about doing this for quite some time. So really, the only introduction that you've had so far is that you're a painter and you live on Fogo Island. So
Yes.
what else should we know about you?
What else should we know about me? I've been here for about 9 years. Next year will be 10 years. I grew up in New Jersey.
You're American.
I'm an American, American citizen, heading towards Canadian citizenship, we hope this year. And, but I was born in New Jersey, and I had a nice childhood, good enough, and I always drew when I was a little kid, and eventually went on to Cooper Union in New York. Before I went to Cooper Union, I would go in when I was a teenager to the Art Students League.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and this is the late 70s.
Wow.
Yeah, when it was, one of the most dangerous cities in the world. My parents sent me on a train into New York City, onto the subways, and I started there when I was about 15 years old. So I went to the Art Students League, and Raphael Sawyer was my teacher to paint.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a few different figure drawing teachers. I would do part of my summers there. I work for like June and July, and then I'd spend one full month, or maybe 3 or 4 weeks, doing like a full-time little stint there. Maybe on the weekends I did it, Saturdays and Sundays, or at least Fridays or Saturdays I'd go in. They'd have Friday, Saturday times you could go in. So, and then during winter I'd do maybe weekends if I could, but I had to work in order to pay for it all. But yeah, so I had these great figure drawing teachers. One, this guy named Palumbo, just an old guy he was a really good teacher. And then I had Raphael Sawyer, and he loved me. Yeah, because I was so young.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but he taught me to paint, and he loved when I was there, and I loved having him show me. He would show me how to paint. He'd take my brush. And he was like, "No, this is the way you do it." So I remember him saying things. Put the little red there. Put the little blue there. Things like that. And so then I went up to Cooper Union, majored in painting, just like you did. You went to Cooper Union, and that's about it. By the time my 20s came around,
But you've lived in a lot of places.
I have. Those years when I was at Cooper, I lived in Hoboken, and that was neat because it was like right before it became Yuppieville, and it was a really neat place. And I spent until I was 28 there, and then I moved. I got up and packed my car and moved to New Mexico, and lived in New Mexico for 10 years, Taos, New Mexico, and that was in my 30s, and that was a beautiful time. It was an eye-opening time, and it was a great time for my painting. I had a short stint in Omaha, Nebraska, and but I spent 10 years in basically in Taos, and then after the 10 years were up in 2000, I moved to Brooklyn.
Oh.
Yeah, another place right before the hipsters. So I go right before gentrification happens, and then I can't live there anymore because I don't have enough money to live there. So I go somewhere else, and then within years I'm kicked out of there. So, which didn't happen here on Fogo Island, but could have if things were different. But I lived in Brooklyn for a couple of years, and that was wonderful. I had a huge loft to paint in.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the size of a basketball court. Yep, the length of a basketball court.
Wow.
Yeah, it was 18 feet wide, and then however long the basketball court was.
What neighborhood was that in?
It was in Williamsburg. It was right on the East River. It was on, it starts with a W, not Wyeth. I forget the name of the street, but it was right on the East River. My windows looked out towards the, there was a paper recycling garbage dump place right next to it. I didn't look out in the water. Yeah, I was like the second or third. Mostly artists went into that building, but within 3 years it was being sold off. Mm-hmm. And it was the old envelope factory. Oh. And do you know Williamsburg?
Yeah, I mean, it's so transformed now, I wouldn't know it, but back in the day.
Yeah, and it was great back then. I had a good time. Yeah, so after that I went to Boston, and then after that here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you end up in Fogo?
Once I went to Boston, there were a few things that happened. I got to Williamsburg, and that was in 2000. And of course, one of the first things that happened was I had an older brother who became ill, and this is part of the story. But he became sick, a brain tumor, and he was up in Boston. And also within that year, 9/11 happened. So lots of things happened that first year that I got back, which were devastating but needed attention. And so within a few years after my brother subsequently passes away, and New York City eats me up and spits me out, and then I don't know where to go. So I spend a little time in Newark, New Jersey. And from there, I'm really not doing well, financially or otherwise. So my younger brother asked me to go up to Boston. So I go up to Boston because he's a lawyer. And it's a long story, but he hires me to be his secretary, and he's a criminal lawyer. Hmm. Yes. And yes, so I become his secretary, criminal secretary. And I'm really good at it. Most of it is drug possession law. So in that period of time, the rest of my mother and father, they become ill. My father becomes ill, and then he passes away. And then my mother and he's old. And then my mother is on her way. And I'm kind of tasked to be part of like a secondary care for my mother. And by 2011 or 12, I'm really tired of everything. And I'm tired of being in a city. And I want to go back to a place like New Mexico. And I want to go away. And my mother at that point she put herself into an assisted living situation, which was great. And I knew that she wouldn't need me. And so I decided I'm going to leave. I've got to get out. And so I just started looking at places. I wanted to go somewhere where there was lots of weather. A place they spoke English, because that would be easier for me. I looked at parts of places in Europe and thought they were interesting, and Germany and Ireland, and then I thought of Iceland, and then I found Newfoundland, and I found Fogo Island because Fogo Island Inn was being built, and they talked about artists who were here, and their beautiful studios that I saw online.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured out a way of coming up here, and that was through a small little residency in Tilting, run by the Tilting Recreational and Cultural Society. And I was accepted. In those days, all you did was pretty much write the guy who ran the residency. So I wrote to him, and he said, "Sure, come on up." And so I came here, and pretty much when I got here, I knew I wanted to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I got here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is a lot of weather.
There's a lot of weather. And and I love the weather. And I love the winter, because I love winters. And the storms here are severe, brutal. They haven't been as bad. The first couple of years they were a lot worse, or more. We had more, and I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it's climate change yet or just a part of the seasons now. But that will go back. But we've had some doozies,
I bet.
which make me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so throughout that whole time, you've been painting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I came here painting. Well, my whole life has been painting. Everything I've done has been painting. But subsequently here I met my husband, which is incredible. And we built a house, and we built a studio for me, which we're sitting in now. And before I got here, I had given up on many things in life, including men.
Well, as artists do.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can't, it's just that way. And I was 50 when I got here, and I was like, well, I did my best. Whether anybody out there doesn't think that, it's okay. I tried. But yeah, I was ready. I was not only ready. I had prepared for years for this moment of like complete autonomy and being far away. That's something that I think was always in me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And every moment leads up to another moment, to another moment, to another moment, and this would be the place. And then I met Dawn, who we fell in love and got married. And it's beautiful and wonderful, and I do have my autonomy.
Mm.
It came with the package, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what led me to here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we are in your studio,
which
is beautiful. Right on the edge.
Right on the edge. The ocean's right out there. Yeah. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
Very fortunate.
So, I mean, it's such an obvious question, but I mean, does having the ocean literally outside the window affect what you're painting?
Well,
I paint
oceans. Yeah, everybody will see that I paint oceans. No, I painted oceans. I painted water for a very, very, very long time, and landscape for a very long time. I painted when I lived in New Mexico. I was painting boats, large,
Like the driest place on earth.
the driest. Yeah, and we're at 7,500 feet there. So remember, it's also very cold there.
Yeah.
Yes, that also has brutal weather and beautiful weather. But no, I was painting boats there, so I've always had a connection to, this is a connection, that thing of water and waterways. And, the boat is, well, the symbol, would be a symbol of it without the water. And so, I think living by the ocean is a spectacular life. I think it is. I'm gifted by living next to the ocean. When I lived in New Mexico, well, anywhere. I mean, if you're in New York City, this is the space that's like, actually not everywhere, anywhere, that's for sure. But there are some special places in New Mexico and Taos Mountain, and the Mesa, and the people. And here we have this ocean and the weather and the barrenness. This is a very, very barren place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And particularly where you live.
Yes.
The whole island of Fogo isn't exactly like this, but where you are is really like there are not any trees.
There are no trees. Yeah. Yeah, there are no trees. And if there are trees, well, actually, there are no trees right out the window. You can't find one. But if there are trees, you'll see them if the wind blows north, and it's like the trees are like that. And then there's no branches on that side.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of Charlie Brown Christmas trees out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very barren. And, today's very cloudy and beautiful and very cool, which is great because we've had a very warm summer. And right now the ocean is a little rough, and some white caps, and reflective gray from the gray sky.
Yeah.
And the grass is turning just a little bit brown.
Yeah.
Right now.
Fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your practice now, do you mind calling what you do an art practice?
It's not that I mind. It's not something I ever used until I got to Canada.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, everybody's practicing up here. So I practice. So, and I understand that's kind of it's a fine term.
Yeah.
I've never had practice. I've always just worked in my studio. I'm a painter.
Yeah.
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 So that's.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I got started calling it a practice because it related to Zen practice.
Uh-huh.
And so I just sort of kept
I
that
understood.
term, and then
Yeah.
I realized other artists use it, and actually had a whole conversation with an artist who hated that term.
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, it's a little controversial.
Yeah, well, at a time I was like, when I first heard it, I was like, I never practiced in my entire life. I've been hard at work doing this. And so, but now I do realize that it's an accepted term, and I'm okay with it just because let's move through life
Yeah, right.
Easier.
Right, right. So we'll go in a minute to
Okay.
your main space of your studio, but you also do drawing.
I draw. Yep.
And
Always drawn.
do you do other things, printmaking or?
No. I've done a little printmaking.
Oh.
When I was in Taos, there was a master printer, and a place for printing there, and you could get a couple hours, and it was nice, and it was exciting and fun, and I liked it. But I've never been. Has been too process oriented for me, and it also involves other people.
Right.
And I'm very, very solitary. But the few times I've done it, I've liked it, and maybe someday in the right place, if there's a print studio that would take me in and be with me to help me envision. Oh my God, it's dawn. Hold on.
Let me pause.
Yeah. This is a video.
Okay. We're coming into the main studio. So Small Things Brought Together, as you know, is very process oriented. And I feel like we see a lot of process in process.
Yes, there's a lot of process. My work is all, it's funny because printmaking, I was just saying, you know, it's too process oriented, but my work is all about, everything is process. Every single thing. And it's layers and layers. Layers and layers and layers and layers of process. Until it all comes together.
So you paint in oil.
I paint in oil. This is my new palette, my new place to paint, have all my paints. I got it just last year. This whole building was just built during the pandemic.
Oh.
Okay, so this is the new part. We were just sitting in the old part. The old part is over 100 years old.
Oh.
And it's a tiny little place, 13 feet by 9 feet. And 12 children grew up in that house together.
How? Each on a foot.
I know.
Wow.
So this is the new part of my studio, which I love. I'm very fortunate again. This is a gift in the world.
You know, I'm just realizing that in this series, it's very rare to actually see someone's workspace while we're talking.
Oh, okay.
Because usually we're doing it on Zoom. Mm-hmm. So to see your palette table feels very important in terms of seeing then the work and seeing like what you just said about that there's a process. And so the works that we're seeing on the wall now are all underway. Is that right?
Pretty much. This one is pretty much finished. And, well, you're going to see figures in this. And I used to do more figurative work in the 90s. In the early 90s, up until the early 90s, I suppose. So I might be doing more of it. It's very dark. These reference they can be politically motivated. Women and children, the lives of children, war, and all the little children have halos. Mm-hmm. There, and a halo used to be one of my symbols many years ago when I painted people. There were a few things that halos did. Halos, of course, are a holiness of the person, and it's also a little cap that keeps them down on earth after they die or while they're here. Oh. It's temporality, so it's all the temporalness of their bodies while on earth. Okay, and it can keep them here, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing that they're not going to heaven or anything like that. But they're here, and they're in essence the part of what we are and who we are. So generation kind of thing. But so that's what my halos are on some levels.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when I look at this painting in particular. The top actually, which I guess, you know, has a sky reference, obviously. Even sort of stars, right? It feels heavier than like where the children are, the figures.
So you're saying that it seems heavy, darkness coming down.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, when you were talking that way, I was like, oh, but the density of the painting feels at the top, even as that is clearly the reference to the sky.
Right. Well, there's a lot of, as far as I can feel, there's a lot of evil around.
Yeah.
There's not, in this painting, there isn't necessarily light here,
Yeah.
and there may not be. This might be the end. So it's not that it is or isn't, but it definitely could be.
And so this sort of, I don't know if you would even call it like a story or something, but like, does that emerge as you're painting? Or you begin and say, okay, I want to like.
No, this emerged.
Uh-huh.
This emerged during the Ukraine information coming out of the Ukraine, and there was a point where a school was bombed and there were children. Okay, I can also reference, and I will, the discovery of the children in what is it, Kamloops, residential school. So all of this was coming all in a series of time that just fed into this painting, and it brought me back to the early '90s when I was working, the same kind of way, and reaction to war, and subsequently coming out of the '80s, and it's a long story. It's really all that stuff has very little to do with the work now. Okay?
Yeah.
But I began to paint again this thing that's from the outside into my work, and I've started enjoying it again, and that's a little bit of the story here. But they're very dark paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they're not light.
No.
And like
Okay.
this one is like one of my oceans. I have many oceans. See, right now there aren't any oceans here. And I just began putting the sun and the moon into my oceans. And my drawings are also a reference to, well, the circle, which is a sun or a moon, and direction, and I don't know what else to say, but I thought while you're here, you might as well film one of my oceans with I think it's the sun.
That's the sun?
I think the name of it is, I could not tell if it was a sun or a moon.
Yeah,
Which would be unfortunate for the person out in the middle of nowhere.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, so that's the point.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I couldn't tell, and if you are in a place where you need direction, because there's nothing around you, and one chooses in this fog to believe it is the sun, and you believe that would be then the north or south, or you go towards the sun, and you made a mistake because it's actually the moon there.
Yeah.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what does that mean in any other word or sense other than when you are in the middle of nowhere, and I don't mean to be lost, but when you are in a sense of nowhereness, where do you find in yourself a certain place to trust, to move forward to move with?
Uh-huh.
And if you are going to do that, the consequences, are you willing and are you able to handle the consequences if you ended up following the moon?
Uh-huh. But you thought you were following the sun.
Yeah. So that idea of where you are in nowhereness, and it is the sense inside one's own personal journey where what are or who are or where are you going to trust to go and embrace and be a part of it.
So even though you're making these massively expansive landscapes in a way. They're not about the outside.
I don't think so. No, I think they're. What do you mean? Okay, so say something else. What is that?
Well, it just, when you were just talking, I was like, oh, it's not. I mean, it's very easy to think, oh, M'Liz lives in Fogo Island. Her studio's on the edge of the
Yeah.
coastline, and out the window is the ocean, and she happens to paint big skies and oceans, expanses.
Yeah,
And everything you've said has been like an internal experience.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Everything here is it's an abstraction using obvious things that we are around, but they're all. I'll tell you about this one. Semi-tell you about it, but many years ago, I think I referenced it the other day in my ossuary paintings, which came to a place after my brother died, and after he died, I couldn't find him in the world anymore, and I couldn't find him in the spirit world either. There was no. He literally just was absent. Like what was there before was gone, and it was very, very troubling because I didn't feel like love. I was like, geez, Joe's gone.
Yeah.
So there was this complete absence, and eventually, through an experience of birds, well, I'll tell you. Yeah, quickly. So, when I was in Brooklyn, the old Dominican men are on the rooftop of buildings, and they have thousands of pigeons. And they take their pigeons out with this big, long reed, and there's a black plastic bag on the end of it, and they bring out the pigeons, and they exercise them, and they take the flag, and they whirl it, and the birds go round and round and round and round. And they do it for, a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. And one day this was happening, and I saw all of the shadows of these birds going around, going all the way on the side of the brick building, down on the floor, down on the ground beneath me, underneath me, all around. They were like, all these birds. And what was crazy was, all of a sudden, my brother, I was like, oh my God, Joe, you're here. And I was like, it was like happy. And I thought, all of a sudden he was back, okay? And I was like, phew, that was a close call. Because you don't want to go through life.
Yeah.
Stupid. So, I painted all these paintings, which were quite beautiful, but desolate as the land outside the windows. And I put in a flag, but you can't see here. But there was a flag here, but there's an arch that's right there, and you can't see it, but there was the flag right there. And these were called my ossuary paintings, and I painted dozens of them and drawings of. It was a metaphorical place where I planted the flag that said, this is where Joe is. This is where he is in the world. So this thing is not real.
Yeah.
This isn't a landscape. You might be able to see ridges of like cliffs here, and a sun or moon and clouds and stuff. But this isn't like, this is a space in the world that, temporal, because this is where I am, right? So this is the explanation of where I knew Joe would be. Now it's 20 years later, I'm not painting the ossuary paintings. But this is something that I reference where, along with the painting over here, a place where the dead lie. And in a space where, in this world, a very difficult world that we live in, beyond tragic, inhumane world, there are places where we can find those who are gone. That and to me, in this world, that makes my world more whole. And so this is kind of where this thing was going. And you know, at the end of the day, this might feel dark. I don't know if it will. It might feel light. We'll see. A lot of the ones, the Ossuary paintings, just had desolation about them, which is a kind of beauty anyway. A before and after. You know there was something before, and you know there'll be something after that had that kind of feeling to it. This one might have it. That one, not so much. I don't think there's going to be too much light in there.
Yeah, that one's, as you said, it's feeling finished, right?
Yeah, it's feeling finished, and I think it will be just...
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, another thing just about the painting, I got a new color, and it's Mars Red. And so I got to use this Mars Red, which I love. And it's this earthy, dark, dried blood earth color.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful, and I love that. And it's in here too. So I don't need to be a Debbie Downer. Because there's a lot of other things that are happening. The stars are falling down and the clouds are rising, you know?
Yeah.
And,
yeah, that's a dark painting in like every sense of the word, and I don't know, is that the overall feeling of the work? To me, it's more like, well, it's like, I was going to say stormy, but it's not even stormy. It's more like after the storm, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I like that, because there's, I think when I was doing these Ossuary paintings, it was always that there was something before, and there is the promise of after.
Yeah.
Just by the way of the desolate part, and the flag.
Yeah.
And now, you know, I always feel as if it's an after and it's not before. I don't believe these little children are going to be led anywhere to bad things.
No.
No, at all.
No.
Maybe a state in between.
And they have each other.
Yeah, they all have each other. Yeah, they all have each other. And that large figure doesn't necessarily mean it's a doom and gloom figure. It could easily be the person, the larger person bringing them forth into shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is this like a size that you work in and have worked in for a long time?
Yeah, I've always worked, I like to work large. I actually like working really small too, but I love big paintings. Yeah.
I mean, it really there's like a larger than human scale to the feel of them.
Oh, okay.
You know, as if like stepping into something that's like way bigger than me.
That's great.
Yeah.
That because it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing is. And when, the ocean, when I actually, I can get out another ocean, let me just, because I can do it. And it's a little big, but it's not that big. And this is just an ocean. And this one came it kind of came right before I started putting the moons and the suns in. So this is within the last month, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the last thing I did. And let's pop it up. So this is one of my oceans that like kind of stormy. I would bring out my big one. I should have brought my really big one out, but that's okay. But this is just a stormy one. It's like after a storm. But it's, you know, it's graphically very just an ocean. It's just a freaking ocean. But, so, everything's lifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all lifts. And the depth and the largeness of an ocean is pretty big. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so, I'm glad you say that because that's what that's part of the, it's not metaphor, it is what it is, which is larger than what we are.
Yeah.
It's all larger.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, that path is larger, everything is larger. And if you're like in there, if one is in there, when will you decide, I feel I'm going to be okay? When does it happen?
Right.
Yeah. And if it's fleeting, then what else happens for the rest of that time? You know?
Yeah.
What happens if it's only fleeting? And who are you and what are you the rest of that time? Are you just a flailing, you know, person actually in the middle of nowhere when you are somewhere? And again, this constant thing of like this, the directionless or the direction of the circles in the drawings. Like the scarecrow, you know, which way to go, you know, and which way are you going to go?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it has zero to do with where you end up.
Say more.
Well, number one, wherever you are is where you are anyway, and I know that's kind of like a platitude, but it's kind of true. But the idea of like where you're going to end up is almost immaterial as to the decisions that you're making right now.
Like, because we don't know where we're going to end up.
Well, we don't know where we're going to end up, but the hope of where you end up, well, it has to keep that. But if you're going to go north, then there's a place where you have to know that moment that north is the right thing. Okay, you just have to, because if you keep on doubting, then this journey or wherever in the middle of nowhere is like really, really, the journey would become immaterial. It's like, oh, I just happened to get here.
Right.
You know?
But it isn't ever actually that way, even if that's what you think is happening. Or you're not thinking. So you think you're just going to work, coming home, having a beer, going to bed, waking up. Like, that can feel like not making a choice. But it's a choice. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's all a choice, and I don't know if I'm getting super into the nitty-gritty of the going to work thing.
Okay.
Exactly. But I mean, one could go there. That could my logic or whatever or illogic can go there. It's well, yeah, it is a choice, and that choice is actually I'm going north.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to go with the moon, and when I wake up in the morning and I find out, I'm going to go with the sun, and when I find out it's the moon, and it's totally fucked.
Right.
What do I do then?
Yeah.
And I'm still in the middle of nowhere. So this is like this is the nasty poem that keeps on going on and on and on. You know, like a Merwin poem. That'll just I'm standing there and like time is passing and I've done nothing. But what can I do within that time that's passing that makes sense?
Yeah.
To us, to the senseless.
Yeah.
But this is just me, you know?
Yeah.
This is just me.
Otherwise,
they're just you. They're pleasant oceans, you know? Or I
don't know if pleasant is going to work.
They're just little kids, you know?
Yeah. I mean, so your drawings, which I just took a little shot of quickly, like scanned the table, they all have, again, this like reference to time and location, direction. And in some of them, you're literally like marking time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the paintings, there's like, okay, there's maybe it's a sun, maybe it's a moon. This is some kind of horizonless space, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like no location, no time.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah. How do you explain that?
Bring my drawings.
Yeah.
No. You know, I don't know if I have an explanation right now because these circles, they just started last year.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And the circles are our journey. When I first got here, the doors on the stages have circles on them, and a stage is a little building out on the water, and it's when the fishermen go out, they get in their boats and then they go out to sea. Okay, and then when they come back, their doors have they're red buildings, and their doors have a white circle on them. And so when they come back through the fog or in the evening, when the sun is going down, they can have their lantern and they will see the white dot on their stage and they know where to go. Okay, so when I first saw the dot, the circle, I knew my journey here. I swear, it was like I knew my journey all this time. Everything that led up to this, I was like, oh, the dot on the door, and I was like, this is my journey. This is where I am now, and I recognize it. I recognize it, and steps along the way I've recognized. Obviously, I have in my world. Many times I haven't, but that's too bad. But so this circle, over the last year or two, has become more and more my focus. And I put them in the drawings. And the circle means you see the circle, you go towards it. Mm-hmm. You open that door, and then you go through the building, the dark little building, and then you go through the other door and you go to the ocean. You get in the boat and you leave, okay? And then when you go out there, whatever happens out there, in the middle of nowhere, when you come back, everything that you've done, you've been a changed person. And you don't know it. Because you just went out to sea, whatever you do out there. But when you come back into the circle, and you're drawn to it because this is your home. Because you know the circle, it's this place that draws you back, and you go back into the building, and you go out the other side, and you go back home, and you have changed. You have this journey, whatever those collective moments are, fear, love, excitement, delirium, connectedness, detachment, all of these combine into something. You're 3 months older, okay? You're not only 3 months older because you left 3 months ago, but you're actually 10 years older from the 10 years that you did before you even went out into your boat, okay? So you've got all this thing, and it comes, and this is like, to me, this is kind of what I paint.
Yeah. I mean, I hear like birth, death, rebirth in that story. And I mean, you know, to me, we were talking with Erin a bit about like sacredness, but for me, this is like a spiritual journey you're talking about also. But I don't know if you would put that term on.
It would be, and this isn't my journey. This is like, I think this is your journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so just so the listeners doesn't think, oh, M'Liz is, you know, these are my this
Right.
is where I'm going, you know.
Right, no.
It's like, it's
Like an existential journey.
this is an existential journey, and I know that I've been on it my whole life. I have the markers, I have proof, I have it, and it comes back at me consistently, and I've become friends with it, and I've become I've become friends with it. I know it, and I know it's a good one, and it's not a satisfactory one. You don't get there's no, it's delayed satisfaction, which I'm good at. So, but that's what this is, and there's so much joy in that, in the process of, what I was saying to Bruce, it's in the power of repetition.
Yeah.
The power of repetition, and like I said, prayer, or someone said exercise. That once you do, then you all those hours that you don't know what you're doing when you're going to work and you're coming home and you're having a beer are part of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't, not necessarily lost. You're not necessarily not doing anything. It's part of it, but this it is a journey. It's a life journey. Yes, it's spiritual. It has to be spiritual.
Yeah.
But this is the temporal. I call it a temporal journey. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not up there.
Right.
Or down there.
Right.
It's actually here.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like for you, this, you know, the circle is like to me, it's like, oh, there's like a joy of recognition. You're out tossing around on the waves, feeling all the feelings, but then, oh, there it is.
There it is. Oh, this one you don't know if it's a moon or a sun.
Yes.
Screwed. You know, because the circle
But there
does
it
not always
is.
speak truth.
Yeah. Well, you'll find out.
Well, you find out because you trust.
Yeah.
Because you trust the temporal journey.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's a sun, it's a sun. Okay. Thought it was a moon, but
right. Well, in order to get where you do need to go, because you can't sit in nothingness.
Right.
Or you will.
Yeah.
But that's, I guess, I don't know if I'll find out if this makes sense once I see this.
After. Yeah.
But so when I read the I Ching. Yeah. So a lot of those drawings are connected to the I Ching. Yeah, and you'll see the lines. And I choose them. I don't throw the I Ching. So it's like I'll just look and I'll be like, oh, there it is. Like, and there are certain phrases, the hinge of things, which I find like within the drawings. That is another part of the circle. and direction. And where there's a hinge, that means that it's the circle has moved or touched something else, and something else is going to happen just because a hinge opens up. So the hinge of things. So a lot of these arrows are actual directional hinges to something, and likewise a perfectly reasonable place to go. You know, so that's part of the I Ching too. Taking counsel and understanding what is perfectly reasonable to do or action to take in part of this question or the journey. And so that's part of my circles.
Maybe it's worth going and just looking again at the drawings.
Okay. You go first.
Yeah, just got another.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So you can see, is it on?
Yep.
Okay, you can see my boat.
There's your boat.
There's one of my boats, and here's another boat image. So, like a long time ago, I painted the boats. This is the boat. Okay? Because you're in the boat and you have to go in a direction. So now the circle is actually, it's just another form of a boat,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And what else can I say about them that I just kind of said, other than I'd have to look up exactly what the I Ching marks are and how they relate to the arrows. This is one of the hinge of things when these two circles come together, and it's going to propel something. There's energy.
Right.
So the hinge of things is energy, right? And it's gonna put you somewhere else. It's going to show you something else. It's going to make you go somewhere else. In the old days, and I bring back the ladders were the same thing.
Yeah.
Directional.
Yeah.
And I used to paint ladders in boats. So there were two directions you could go at once, and both of them were very, very fragile and difficult.
Unstable, yeah.
Very unstable.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking
Yeah.
off the top.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because
This one I love. That one I love.
certainly in Zen Buddhism, there's like there's a whole teaching, many teachings about crossing over to the other side. Crossing like water, get in the boat and cross to the other shore. It's actually said, cross to the other shore.
Right.
And it means basically like realize yourself.
Get off the top. Or
Yeah, and crossing to the other shore means you realize your true nature, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, boat, you know, water.
Water, yeah. And there's a lot of it. And
You know, in the direction, it's making me also think about this story that is not Buddhist, it's Vedic, of this guy who's with his teacher. His teacher, they sit in the shade because it gets hot, and then the teacher says, could you go get me some water? And they're on a journey. And the student goes, and in the process of looking to get some water, he meets a woman, gets married, starts a family, creates a whole life, has children, and then a huge storm comes, and a flood comes, and sweeps away everything. And he's lost everything. And then he sort of tumbles out of the flood waters and sees his teacher still laying under the tree having a nap. And the teacher's like, "Did you bring my water?" I I feel like I hear that story in your work. Like a whole life can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. In other words, it's like, between here and there, it's something gets you from here to there.
Yeah.
And it's not one thing.
Yeah.
And it's not, and time of course is a whole nother questionable or thing to talk about.
Yeah.
The elasticity of time, whether or not that, sometimes I feel like we only live one day. And the moon and the sun, night and day just mark something, but it's just one day. It's just it's one thing with time that we have to go to sleep because we're made to get tired. But otherwise, we're just here one thing, one time, and
Yeah, who's to say?
yeah, it's sometimes it just makes sense to me that it's like actually, I'm not 59. I'm like one full thing of it, and other people aren't. My brother is 44, but his was that,
Yeah.
and that's what it was. So that has nothing to do with anything right now. But this is another hinge of things. This little thing that creates energy when it hits. This one almost. This is not a good line. Drawing line, bad, but it's a beautiful drawing. I like it. But I like what you just said. Thank you. I appreciate that. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.